Welcome back to the A Game, and we have a special social distancing edition this week. I'm Garrett Davenport, and with me is Holland Bostrom and Alan McManus. We are going to have a freewheeling discussion on the NCAA and college basketball. So let's get right into it here on the A Game. Welcome to this special edition of the A Game. First of all, Holland, Alan, how are you guys doing?
Well, I wish we were in the studio, I'll tell you that. But
definitely weird.
Case in point right there. You got to worry about talking over people. But a Zoom A game is better than no A game.
So that's true. It's definitely been interesting to see how things have shaken up. Especially in the sports world, it's absolutely insane. Not even in the sports world, just including everything else going on. Everything else that's getting canceled. States on lockdown. It's wild.
So we're going to go straight into that. The NCAA decided to cancel all collegiate sports for the foreseeable future. Do you guys agree with this decision to cancel, or should they have postponed these events?
That's a good question, Garrett. I'm always going to say, I think you should err on the side of, hey, let's see what happens. Because if you postpone something, you can always cancel it. So my line of thinking was, hey, why not postpone the NCAA tournament and maybe by May, which obviously at this point we've kind of realized that this pandemic is kind of here to stay for a longer period of time than we thought. But if you postpone it, you always still have the opportunity to revisit the possibility of playing the tournament. So I'm in the camp of, hey, let's postpone it instead of cancel it. But they made the decision, and us, the fans, have to live with it.
I mean, it's true that you do. It's always good to kind of err on the side of caution, just postponing it, holding it off. But the way that I kind of see things is if you just postpone it longer and longer, you have employees of the NCAA and also people who were going to work these, regional games, the Final Four. You have people wondering, are they going to have that, eligibility or opportunity to make money, to continue to be like freelance guys that'll be probably doing camera. So I guess in my opinion, I think it's better that they just cut it and make sure that these employees and freelancers can find another source of income instead of just kind of, planning on that and just kind of waiting and hoping to see.
Well, I will say this. We have seen, to the point about the workers that work these venues and work these events, we've seen quite the movement by the people that own the teams that play there, like Mark Cuban and those types of people, Arthur Blank from the Atlanta Falcons, where they're like, we got you covered. We'll be able to pay for your expenses because, those people that were working or that would have worked these events, that you plan around that. So we got to give credit where credit is due. And a lot of these big higher up people where their net worth starts with a B are doing pretty good in terms of serving the people that work for them.
I mean, really, I can't say enough about how great of a job these owners have done and higher ups have done. CEOs of different companies and also owners of teams, general managers have done a great job. I know here in the state of North Carolina, I'm not sure about the Hornets, but I know that part-time employees, of PNC Arena have been taken care of for the foreseeable future by Tom Dundon and general manager Dom Waddell. So I've seen almost every owner, at least in the NHL, because I'm a big hockey fan. I've seen almost all of them. I think the only one who didn't say something concrete about taking care of their part-time employees was at TD Garden with the Boston Bruins. His name slips my mind right now, but I think most professional sports teams have done a great job of looking out for their part-time employees.
And let's not forget the players too. I think it was it was Zion that was the first player that came out and it was like, boom, I got you $100,000. I got you for wherever they play for the Pelicans. So there's been a lot of people that are stepping up to help the everyman, so to speak.
Zion Williamson, and also I saw that Kevin Love did just about the same. He was donating, I think it was between 100,000 and $1 million. I'm not sure which number exactly it was, but I know that Kevin Love was really looking out for the Cavs employees.
So speaking on the NBA, guys, what do you think is the next course of action for the NBA? Do we go straight into the playoffs when all this blows over, or do you think that the season's even going to keep going?
I think that regarding the NBA, they do a very good job of profiting. I know that at least in the NHL, they're also worried about their profits. Every major sports league right now is worried about that on top of trying to take care of their part-time employees. I mean, personally, I think that the NBA will try. I think they're going to try their best to resume the season if they can. I don't think that they should. I think that every sports league that was in the works as of right now was in the middle of the season. So the NHL and the NBA, I think that they should both just, can the season. This will be a big, black mark through it. You just kind of cross it off and you worry about next season. You let the players recuperate. Some of the players have actually contracted COVID-19 and are recovering and have recovered. I know that Rudy Gobert is fully recovered. I think Donovan Mitchell has as well. So I think that they should definitely
Marcus Smart is recovered too. Yeah.
Right. I think that they should just clear the table and we set up for next season. And it's just a, what if, and there's going to be a whole lot of discussion of who would have been the NBA champion and who would have made a run in the playoffs. But I think it should be tabled.
Now that would take a big financial hit to a lot of people. I like I said at the very beginning, just talking about this generally, or about the NCAA tournament, for example, I don't see any need at this stage in the game. It's April 3rd. I don't see any reason to go ahead and say, hey, we're done. Why not? Let's just see what happens. Give it another month or so. And I don't know if y'all remember the 2011 lockout season in the NBA. So there was several months. There was two months that it didn't play basketball. And so when they came back, you had teams playing 4 games a week, which, while that may not be the healthiest thing for the players, as a fan, I did not watch the NBA before the lockout, or at least as intently as I do other sports. When I was able to watch LeBron and the Heatles 4 nights a week, I was sold on the NBA. And I think that, let's say that they're able to resume play on June 1st, play an abbreviated rest of the regular season, and then go right into the playoffs. And then it's as if, this whole thing didn't happen.
I mean, that's true, but you also kind of, at least for me, you need to draw the line between, financial issues and your human issues. You need to look out for your players as well as your employees. I mean, this, as of right now, at least, it's looking like the USA is going to become, we already are the worldwide leader in sports. Now we're the worldwide leader in this pandemic. It's just skyrocketed, in the past week or two, that I feel like this is only going to push things back even further, to where if you resume the season, then you would still be playing basketball or hockey or whatever sport it is. You'd still be playing those by the time that the next season would have started in October, in my eyes. And I feel like it would just keep pushing it back so much, to where if you did finish the season, the players would have no time to recuperate and be healthy for the next go around.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about them overlapping into the next season. But ultimately, I'm as a fan, I mean, let's put it. Yes, last night I watched the 1984 Division II National Championship for football between North Dakota State and Troy State. It was a barn burner, and Troy State won on a 50-yard field goal from a freshman kicker. It was great. But that just shows you how starved us, at least the typical kind of sports fan is for it. And I understand there's the humanistic side of things, But once we're clear and these shelter-in-place orders are lifted, it's game on.
Oh, yeah.
So, guys, one more thing. The NBA draft and NFL draft are coming up. And with COVID-19, how is this going to affect these draft picks? How does it affect the draft itself?
Well, to the draft picks perspective, it means that you cannot go look at, you can't physically go get a doctor and look at Obi Toppin out of Dayton and evaluate his knees or something like that. You're going to have to draft the way that all of us put together mock drafts just from behind your computer screen. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting for how the teams go about drafting the players. I think it'll actually make for a much better experience for the individual players, being able to be around their families and stuff like that. Instead of having to go to wherever the NBA draft is and go through that whole entire process. I definitely think that's for some people, but I would think for the majority of people, they just want to be around their friends and family and their support group to help them get to where they currently are as an NBA prospect. But it's going to be very interesting, and we saw it with NFL free agency. The doctors not being able to get their hands on these potential players and evaluate them, whether they're going to be able to be up to snuff medically.
Yeah, it definitely seems like to me that this is going to be one of the first years, especially in the NFL draft. I'm not sure how they're going to handle that. I saw that Goodell did greenlight it because it's in Vegas, I believe, the 23rd through the 25th. I'm not sure if there will be any players there. It might just be like limited. It might be them and one of their people. But overall, we're going to see a lot of live feeds from their homes, which will probably be very limited. It'll be a lot less people than we're used to seeing, like the guys who didn't actually go to the draft and who got picked at home and had a live feed and had a big reaction.
Yeah, there won't be any cookouts.
No, there definitely won't be any parties. So it's definitely going to be. I think it's going to be very awkward in my eyes to see one of the top prospects, especially in the NFL, to get picked, and there's a live feed at home of them, their mom, their dad, and their brother, and that's it. So who even knows if they'll have a live feed? I hope that they would, because I'd love to see the reaction. But it's definitely going to be a weird year for drafting for sure.
App TV's original program, Pixel Peek, is back and better than ever.
Pixel Peek is a weekly news show covering the video game industry. Everything from the most recent announcements to hot topics and controversies are covered by us, your hosts.
Pixel Peek is also your home for interesting and objective game reviews and in-depth analysis of the industry's biggest names.
You can watch Pixel Peek every Wednesday afternoon at 3 on watchapptv.com or on any of these TV channels.
Thanks for stopping by, and we hope you come back to visit us here
on Pixel Peek.
We're going to switch to March Madness, and ESPN ran a poll on social media asking the general public who is the greatest college basketball player of all time. The winner of that poll was Michael Jordan. Now, guys, do you agree with this?
Well, you see, Garrett, this is where I take issue with the way that we rank things in the 21st century. They're using online, they're using Twitter, they're using Instagram, and it seems like a lot of these people that are voting are under 30. They see MJ and they think Chicago Bulls greatest of all time, MJ. They don't recognize or realize that 30 years before they were born, Michael Jordan was just simply another guy on the UNC roster back in 1982. Sure, he hit that big shot against Georgetown in the championship game, but I think that even he would tell you that he was just another guy. I mean, there was a lot of firepower too on that UNC roster. Holland, you might be able to help me out with that roster, but I'm spacing on some of those names. But I think maybe Phil Ford was on that team, maybe. And then the guy that played for the Lakers was on that team too. I forgot his name, but there was I say all that to say that there was a lot of firepower on that team, and Michael Jordan was arguably not even the best player on his own team. So I think that it's fun. It's great when you get people involved to vote for their favorite player. But I do take issue with the poll as it did turn out. They need some old hats in there to tell them, how good Larry Bird was, and Oscar Robinson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. None of these young cats know all about that. So, I definitely take issue with the poll.
Well, I think there's some truth to that on saying that UNC team that Michael Jordan was on, saying that he wasn't the most dominant at the time. But just to kind of come back to how this poll was run, this was a community poll. This is just, people seeing this on their Twitter, Instagram, and just seeing a name and voting. Sometimes they just see a name that they like more than the other name and they pick it. A lot of them see the term or see the phrase basketball player, and a lot of them would then immediately gravitate towards Michael Jordan or Larry Bird over some of the older guys. And I think that there's definitely some truth to the fact that there are also trolls. There are people who would go on, and I'd also like to point out that in this bracket there were also some of the greatest women's basketball players of all time. Some of them included Brianna Stewart, and then most recently Sabrina Ionescu. And those were at 1 and 3 seeds, and they got beat by lower seeds of probably more well-known names that went on to the NBA and continued their dominance. So it's definitely something to think about, that the way this poll was done. Just you definitely have to take it with a grain of salt because it was a community poll.
If anything, it was a popularity contest, not necessarily the best basketball player.
Right, and just to kind of bring up another name. To who I personally think is the greatest college basketball player of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or at the time when he was in college known as Lou Alcindor. And I'd like to read off just some of his accolades just to point out the pure dominance that he had. Over 3 years at UCLA, playing a total of 90 games, his team had an 88-2 record, had 56 points in his varsity debut. In his first game, he had 56 points. His career high was 61. His career high in those 3 years was only 5 points more than his debut from the first game that he played at UCLA. 3 championships in all 3 years that he led them to, and 3 MVPs in the NCAA tournament. And then on top of that, they changed the game because of Lou Alcindor. After his sophomore year, the no dunking rule was established by the NCAA.
Yeah, you're right, guys. And some notable upsets in that bracket that we're talking about. Zion Williamson beat out Christian Laettner. Kevin Durant beat out Patrick Ewing. And Cheryl Miller lost to Chris Webber. Now I'm going to transition to something else. Who is your Mount Rushmore for college basketball?
Well, that's a tough thing to do, because what is a Mount Rushmore but it's the top 4, right? So you have to comb through the history of college basketball to find out, okay, what were the best 4 individuals to ever play the game. And I think that there is some agreement, so to speak, and kind of like, okay, who is like number 1 and 2? I think that Holland and I's list will share some similarities. Like for me, I think that Lou Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think that he is definitely on that Mount Rushmore. And just so we know, I'm not ranking these 1 to 4. It's just top 4, period. And I think that Kareem has got to be up there. Bill Walton, another UCLA center, he has to be on the Mount Rushmore. Here's a guy that John Wooden, who is undisputedly the greatest of all time coached in college basketball, he says that's the best coach or best player that he has ever coached. And I think when you get said that about you, then you got to be on the Mount Rushmore. I think that this next guy hits pretty close to home, and that's David Thompson. back in the early 70s, he was going crazy over there at NC State. And, here's a guy, he was 3-time ACC Player of the Year, 3-time first-team All-American, won the most outstanding player in the 1974 championship that NC State won over the Bill Walton-led UCLA dynasty that had won, I think, 6 championships in a row. And then NC State wins the 74 championship, and then UCLA goes on to win like 3 more. So, I think that David Thompson, and here's another thing about David Thompson. We sit here and talk about Michael Jordan, right? Everybody's crowned him, his airness. He's got the Jordan logo. They even voted him the best in this poll, this ESPN poll. If you ask MJ right now, get him on a Zoom call, he's going to say, hey, I'm not the best college basketball of all time. That's David Thompson. He modeled his game after him. When he talks about Skywalker, he has the utmost respect for him. And to Michael Jordan himself, that was the best college basketball player of all time. And for this last spot, there's a lot of guys that you could slide in there. I gotta go, even though it's way back in the past and it's hard to compare these eras. I gotta put Bill Russell in there as my last slot. Here's a guy comes in the 50s. You're also dealing with racial issues too, but comes in here and dominates the competition, wins back-to-back championships at the University of San Francisco, who I don't even know if they play Division I basketball now. But absolutely dominated on the biggest stage. And as we see in his pro career, where he won 11 championships out of 13 years with the Boston Celtics, he absolutely, all he does is win. But you got a guy that averages 20 points per game and averages 20 rebounds a game. That dude has to be on the Mount Rushmore. What do you think, Holland? What's your Mount Rushmore look like?
Well, those are some very good picks, Alan. I really like those, but I think that we definitely have some differences. The two that I do agree on for sure are Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bill Walton, two UCLA big men that just absolutely dominated the game and brought a dynasty to UCLA. The reason why David Thompson isn't in my Mount Rushmore is because I'm a sucker for consistency. So my third spot goes to Pete Maravich. Ooh. Pistol Pete, averaging. I think that this is honestly the only stat you need to put Pistol Pete on your Mount Rushmore. Through 3 years in college, he averages 44 points per game. I honestly don't know if I need to go any further with that.
With no 3-point line.
With no 3-point line, that's a great point. So that's a whole lot of buckets per game. He's taken over the game himself. And with that, I think after that, for my final pick, I definitely think I want to go with Oscar Robertson, the Big O.
The Big O.
At the University of Cincinnati, through 88 games, so over 3 years. He also averaged well over 30 points with 33.8 points and 15 total rebounds per game over 3 years through 88 games. He was a 3-time NCAA All-Region, and he just absolutely dominated in his time in college. And as we've seen, it translated to an incredible NBA career that I still think is underrated to this day, especially for a guy at his size, because he was 6'5", and you've got everybody else basically on everyone's Mount Rushmore being big men.
Yeah, for so many years. It took until Russell Westbrook a couple years ago for a guy to average a triple-double. That's a really good one. I just do real quickly want to mention some honorable mentions. We won't get into into all the details here, but you got to mention Magic and Larry. They have to be under consideration for the Mount Rushmore. A lot of people don't know about him, but Jerry Lucas, one of the smartest guys to ever play the game. And I'll just throw his name out there. Wilt the Stilt, man. That's a guy that we talk about Kareem and how they changed the rules of the game to make it harder for him to score. Wilt Chamberlain, when he was in college, would do layups when he was taking free throws. And so they made it illegal to attempt a layup off a free throw. I mean, that just shows you what a freak that guy is.
And then one more personally for me, he never won a championship, but simply because of his size and dominance, Ralph Sampson.
Yeah.
I mean, like 7'4" was it for
Yep.
Virginia? Never won a championship, but I still think that his dominance was unmatched. And I think on the right team, he would have been part of a dynasty.
Guys, really love your Mount Rushmores. One little guy for me, an honorable mention, had to be J.J. Redick for me, one of the greatest shooters to ever play college basketball. But that's all the time we have for Alan McManus and Holland Bostrom. I'm Garrett Davenport. Thanks for joining us for this special edition of the A Game.